So I'm going to fast forward to Hua's chapter. So Hua is grandmère. She is Cherry's maternal grandmother. And in this scene, she is remembering the first time she set foot in France after being in the Malaysian refugee camps. The cold. Her first impression of France when they arrived 5 years ago. Yen, the Bourdins, and the other members of the Catholic Charity had greeted them at the airport gate, their faces as bright and animated as the hand-colored banners and balloons they held. But Hua didn't pay attention to these things, or the dizzying, frantic French they sang to the jet-lagged, exhausted travelers. Instead, she focused on the puffy coats their bodies were stuffed in. When Hua hugged her beloved Yen, who was chubbier than she remembered, pinching his arms and shoulders for proof, she pulled back, briefly lifted his coat lapel, and dropped it, stunned. How many pounds must it weigh? Then she looked at their feet, encased in thick rubber boots, planted solidly into the cold, shiny linoleum. Hua examined her own paper-thin clothes and sandals. She remembered the woolen hats in her suitcase, the ones she traded for back in Pulau, but they were buried too deep to dig out on the floor of the airport. No one else seemed to be as distracted by the weather as Hua. Hung burst into tears as he clung to Yen. With his mother's prodding, Zwan kissed his newfound father, but quickly hid behind his mother Trin's legs when the Bourdins started snapping pictures. Later, when Hua would look through the photographs, she'd only see how her teeth seemed to be chattering through her unnatural smile. Outside, someone from the charity tried to shield Hua from the wind as they pushed the Truong family into a cab, but Hua still felt it, the slick air snaking through her inadequate garments, sliding up her thin back and wrapping around her bones. During the cab ride through Paris, she rubbed her face against Hung's shoulder for warmth. Would she be able to walk in such European coats and boots? She was not as strong as she used to be. Yen's apartment was located in the 5th arrondissement, where he said some Vietnamese immigrants had lived for years. Many of the newer refugees had settled in the 13th arrondissement, farther from the city center. It's ugly over there, Yen said, his Vietnamese tinged with French, so Hua had to listen carefully. Ugly but cheap. Tall, square buildings like in the Soviet Union. I think they'll leave eventually, move somewhere nicer where they can save up money. Hua only had to assume the someplace nicer was Yen's neighborhood, which was pretty tree-lined streets dotted with 3- and 4-story apartment buildings. Some of the houses had small iron-fenced gardens in front, brown and skeletal this time of year, but Yen's did not. Instead, the front space contained a metal bench and an empty stone wash basin, which Yen explained was a bird bath. They could fill it with water for the sparrows in the summer. Hua didn't understand why people would want to attract bird droppings, remnants of which littered the ground along the building's front door. His apartment stairwell was narrow, so only one person could fit going up or down. They struggled to squeeze their belongings up the stairs. The stairwell smelled of dust, stale perfume, and incense. Hua's body relaxed as the apartment's heat enveloped her limbs. She wiggled her toes, feeling them again. The bright yellow walls were bare, except for the small metal crucifix hanging by the window. The living room had a dark green sofa, an unvarnished wood dining room set for 4, several folding chairs, an inflatable mattress, and a pile of blankets and pillows in the corner. Down the hall they could see a small bedroom with a twin bed and a fire escape outside its window. Another bedroom with a few cardboard boxes on the floor gave access to a single bathroom. The kitchen, with one broken burner, could only fit 2 people in its floor space. Yen admitted he rarely cooked at home. "It's yours, Mother," Yen said, swinging his arms around her, a hug so deliciously warm. "I was saving it for you." I'm going to fast forward a little bit and read another section from Hua. Although Hua didn't work work like Yen and Feng or volunteer at the community center like Hung. She kept herself busy and productive. In the mornings, she and Juan made breakfast in her ground floor apartment. Hua would prepare thermoses of crab meat soup or baguette sandwiches for lunch. The children were fed, and Trin walked them to the elementary school 8 blocks away. Juan still worried about allowing Trin to take the children to school. Trin had the habit of getting lost on the metro, and she hadn't really improved in the last 5 years. But Hua assured Juan they'd be fine since no public transportation was involved. After the house was empty, Hua proceeded to clean each apartment. None of the family bothered to lock the doors inside the building anymore. Hua liked this part of the day, organizing her children and grandchildren's belongings, holding and dusting the items that mattered to them. She felt hopeful when she found a technical college brochure on her oldest son's dresser, and disappointment when she later emptied the crumpled paper out of the wastebasket. She knew when her granddaughter had tired of her coloring books and had moved on to reading chapter novels, or when her grandson outgrew his fear of murderers lurking on the fire escape and dismantled the barrier of pillows and stuffed animals along his bedroom windowsill. The only area Hua avoided was her husband's desk in the spare room. He specifically requested she not come near it when he was away from the apartment. He had been the same way about his study in their house in Nachang, which irritated Hua. The entire study, which was a pleasant space, good windows with afternoon sun, would collect dust and he wouldn't care. Hung and Hua shared the spare room, half of it his office, the other half her knitting and prayer space. Though Hung hardly kept anything on the desktop, Hua couldn't help but linger over that corner of the room. The items of significance, his journals and letter correspondence, which he'd carried over on the boat and protected all those months in the refugee camp, lay secure in one of the 3 drawers on the right side. There was no padlock. Hua easily could have read all she pleased, but she knew that Hung would find out. It had happened once, early in their marriage. Hua did not wish to incur that level of wrath again. Still, she felt free to privately speculate about the journals and letters. She assumed they contained information about his business dealings, correspondence with the educated elite of Nachang, scholars that included both French and Vietnamese women. It no longer bothered Hua that Hung once kept mistresses. When she first learned of these poets and artists, she had been pregnant with Yen. Hung's older sister assured her that continuing to bear sons secured Hua's status as his only wife. Now, Hung was frankly too old and tired to indulge in such frivolous relations. But it irritated her that he kept such tangible evidence of his indiscretions. Sometimes she walked past the room and saw him reading the letters. While she was busy cooking and cleaning for their family, he was reminiscing about his shameful past. Hua truly didn't want to know any more of Hung's thoughts. She knew enough of his stubbornness, his denigrating opinions, to read them in print, would give them more significance than they deserved. He never hid his disappointment concerning the kind of wife she turned out to be. "If my father only knew before he died," Hung would say to her on difficult days, "he would have driven that matchmaker out of Nachang." While Hua cleaned, her daughters-in-law left to pick up groceries for dinner. Juan had favorite grocers spanning the arrondissement, so she preferred the open-air markets, which reminded her of Saigon. Hua usually stayed home. She did not like to go out unless the rest of the family was with her. When Hua did leave the house, she preferred remaining either in the 5th or 13th arrondissement, where other Chinese and Vietnamese immigrants frequented. She remembered when Yen took the family to the Eiffel Tower for the first time. On the balcony, a small blond boy, cheeks sticky with chocolate ice cream, stared open-mouthed at Hua. When Hua grinned at the child, she was only trying to be nice. His face crumpled and he burst into tears. After Yen exchanged words, apologies, and much laughter with the boy's father, he finally explained the confusion to his mother. "He was scared of your teeth," Yen said. "He's never seen a woman with black teeth before." Just a little boy. He did not know, and probably would not care how many hours Hua's mother spent soaking those teeth with red sticklac and betel nuts so they would look that dark. It was fashionable back then to have lacquered teeth. "The darkest in all of Vietnam," her mother would proudly say. With a lacquered smile, suitors knew you came from a respectable family. During their matchmaking ceremony, Hung complimented her teeth, one of the few compliments he ever gave her. Since the Eiffel Tower, Hua tried to smile as little as possible. When her children weren't around to help and she was forced to speak with native Parisians, she kept her head low, lips close together. No one had cried or laughed at her since.